very good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101, our first edition for this week, our Monday edition, coming out of the weekend. And I know on the weekend we all try to do something uh, at the personal level, something at the level of the family, and ready for a brand new week. But politics never sleep. Politics never sleep. The PPP was on the rampage at Babu John on the weekend. So politics never sleep. And they were not sleeping. And of course, we were not sleeping. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Good evening. Good evening to you if you are joining us from Georgetown, Guyana. Good evening if you're joining us from Berbice, East Berbice, West Berbice, Quarantine, down the river, up the river. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening to you, good people of East Coast. Good evening, especially to the people of Anns Grove. Quite a good meeting there the WPA had on Sunday night. Welcome. Welcome and good evening to the people of Anns Grove. Anns Grove, good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. To the good people of Victoria, where the PPP descended with their entourage and they busting people to Victoria and all of that stuff. Welcome to Politics 101. Some of you who are joining us from London. Regana is joining us from London. Good night to you. Good night to you in London. As I said, good evening to the people of the East Coast, especially the people of Anns Grove and Victoria. Victoria, things are happening in our society. Good evening to you at Linden. Good evening to you at Linden. Those of you who join us from the East Bank of Demerara, the West Bank of Demerara, West Coast, of course, East Essequibo, and those of you from Essequibo period, Essequibo Coast, Essequibo Islands, and those of you in the interior, Region 7, Bartica, Region 8, Region 9, and of course, those of you who join us from the diaspora in our Caribbean, welcome to Politics 101. I was on the radio this morning in Antigua, speaking about the violence in school, the recent incident there in Houston, where a teacher had to seek to defend himself with a cutlass, and it's made the news in the Caribbean. And I was on radio in Antigua this morning talking about that. Good evening to those of you joining us from Antigua and Barbuda. Good evening, those of you joining us from Jamaica, joining us from a yard. Welcome to Politics 101. Barbados, good evening. Good evening if you're joining us from Barbados, all over Barbados. Good evening if you're joining us from St. Vincent, from Grenada, from St. Lucia, from St. Martin. Good evening. And all you wonderful Guyanese who are joining us from Paramaribo, Suriname, or wherever you are in Suriname, French Guyana, welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. And you're joining us from the United States of America, Canada. Please welcome to Politics 101. Those of you joining us from New York, whether you're in Queens or the Bronx or Brooklyn, welcome to Politics 101. Those of you joining us from Harlem, we always tend to forget Harlem. Lots of our people settled there, going all the way back to the Harlem Renaissance. About 100 years ago. Speaking about the Harlem Renaissance, it's coming up to 100 years of the Harlem Renaissance, starting in the 1920s, when Black artists inspired a renaissance in America, renaissance among African Americans, but in America in general, and it's called the Harlem Renaissance, was home to lots of creative energies coming out of the African American community, and lots of West Indians were part of the Harlem Renaissance. Lots of West Indian artists were part of Renaissance. Our own Waldron, I think it's Eric Waldron, was very much part of the Harlem Renaissance. Jamaica's Claude McKay, Alien Lonk, lots of people in the Harlem Renaissance with West Indian roots. And it's 100 years. Harlem was home to lots of West Indians who went there in the early part of the 20th century. Up until the mid 20th century, they were there. Good evening to you. Good evening to you for joining us from Canada, Toronto, Ontario, or if you are in other parts of Canada, welcome to Politics 101. And of course, good night if you are joining us from Europe. We know that lots of us are joining from the United Kingdom, whether you call it the UK or Great Britain, or you refer to it as simply old Mother England. Welcome to Politics 101. Well, it's been quite a busy few days. When we left on Friday night, we were digesting the press conference that was given by Mr. Barrow Jack Dio, and then that was the preview for what was to come at Babujan on the weekend, where they were commemorating the birth anniversary of Dr. Cheddy Jagan and Mistress Jagan. And they used the occasion to, of course, cuss out those of us on the opposition side. But, it's politics, and if they want to remember their leader by cussing out their opponents, there's nothing that I can say or we can say about that. That's how they choose to remember their leader. Welcome to Politics 101. Of course, tonight our headline is Guyana is a deeply flawed democracy. Guyana is a deeply flawed democracy. We started with that conversation on Friday, making the differentiation between democratic procedure and democratic substance. Elections can be termed and are termed democratic procedure, but democratic substance is what you do after you win that election. The election is procedure. That's what it is. It's not democracy. You hear big people, educated people, political leaders talking about democracy when they're talking about elections, as if some of them are playing tricks. My friend Rafi Dev knows the difference between democratic procedure and democratic substance. He knows. I think a lot of the fellows in the PPP, they have a poor understanding of politics and political theory. So some of them genuinely believe elections are the sum total of democracy. But those like Rafi Dev, they know. So when Rafi Dev equates democracy with elections or election with democracy, full stop, and doesn't go on to talk about other aspects of democracy, he's just playing politics because he knows better, and he knows I know better, and some of us know better than that. He knows of Sir Arthur Lewis's definition of what procedural democracy, what substantive democracy is. Sir Arthur Lewis, of course, West Indian, St. Lucian, Nobel Prize winner for economics. And he argues that democracy, substantive democracy, means that all those who are affected by political decisions, all those who are affected by decisions must be at the table to make those decisions. Ravi knows that. He read that 1965 booklet by Otto Lewis. He refers to it all the time. And in that booklet, Otto Lewis makes a distinction between procedural democracy and substantive democracy. And if we think about Guyana from both the procedural and substantive standpoint of democracy, then we must conclude that Guyana is a flawed democracy, bordering on autocracy. Some of us, like myself, believe that we're not bordering, we are more autocratic. Democracy can be used as a mask for autocracy. Democracy for whom? I made the point on Friday that Guyana entered into a new social contract in 2020. And in that social contract, the opposition was not at the table. The now opposition, meaning the PNC, APNU, AFC, WPA, they were not at the table when that new contract was entered into. It was a new social contract entered into between the PPP and its local allies and external forces. And so the contract excluded the representative of African Guyanese. In the same way that when America was born at the end of the 18th century, they entered into a new social contract in which African Americans were left out because they were enslaved. In Guyana, we are not formally enslaved. No chains around our feet. But as Marcus Garvey and Bob Marley argued, no chains around my feet, but I'm not free. And so that social contract in 2020 excluded African Guyanese because their representatives were not at the table. And what we've seen since 2020 is African Guyanese being treated as aliens, being treated as outsiders. There is no institution of government in which African Guyanese have any decision-making power, including the institutions that they predominate, like the armed forces and the civil service. They don't have power in those institutions. Because what has happened is that the new social contract means that every inch of political space has been taken up by the PPP. The winner-take-all system grants political space to the winner. And the understanding is the winner will govern in such a way as not to exclude the loser. But the PPP, which was given a one-seat majority, is governing and excluding all others. So the parliament, which is supposed to be a place where there is some form of inclusion, the parliament has been turned into an authoritarian, dictatorial institution. Rules such as the chairmanship to the PAC and other standing committees, they've now changed those rules. So you can't get a quorum. The committees which are chaired by the opposition in parliament, there's no quorum. No wonder people are berating our parliamentarians and asking, what are you all doing there? No ounce of, not an inch of political space. Not an inch of political space. Welcome to Politics 101. Guyana is a deeply flawed democracy. Guyana is a deeply flawed democracy. There is a raging quarrel going on about who's the father of the nation. Is it Jagan or is it Burnham? Understandably, the PPP says it's Jagan. The PNC says it's Burnham. I don't get into that father of the nation thing. The East Indians, Indian Guyanese, of course. The father of their subset of the nation is Chedi Jagan. They believe that. And they have a right to believe that. And the African subset of the population believes that Burnham is the father of their nation. It is when both sides try to claim the entire Guyana as their nation and impose their father on the nation, that's where they get into trouble. That's where they get into trouble. But we have to understand that Guyana is not yet a fully formed nation. It's a pre-nation, 2 pre-nations, and maybe 3, with the Amerindians now sensing their value. So we are pre-nations. And East Indians have a right to decide who their father is, and Black people have a right to decide who their father is. As I said, the problem is when they want to impose their father on the other side. And that is precisely what the PPP is attempting to do at this moment. You see, Burnham was 100 years old last month. And some of us pleaded with our Indian Guyanese brothers and sisters. You can criticize Burnham, but give him his due. Give him his due. They refused. They refused to give Burnham his due. All of them said Burnham was a dictator, full stop. Not realizing 1 month from they're now going to be celebrating Jagan. And they would want PNC and Black people to treat Jagan fairly. You didn't treat Black people leader last month fairly, and this month you want them to treat your leader fairly. It's not going to happen. And that is the thing, I think, with some of the political commentators. They're so shallow, some of them, intentionally, and some of them are shallow, period, that their lack of understanding of even what's happening in front of them. If you cannot analyze Burnham based on his strengths and his weakness, why do you want the other side to analyze Jagan based on his strengths and his weaknesses, or on his strengths alone? So when Jagdio is cussing Hamilton Green, he forgot, or intentionally forgetting and plain forgetting, that last month they weren't talking about Burnham in a broad way. So why should Hamilton Green talk about Jagan in a broad way? This is the problem with these political people when they have power in their hand. They just believe the rest of us are so stupid. So stupid. They're so stupid to believe that people don't understand what's going on. Let me say this for the record. Let me say this for the record. I think Chedi Jagan made a tremendous contribution to Guyana. And whether we are East Indians or Africans, we should acknowledge that. Did Chedi Jagan make political mistakes? All politicians do and did. But in this hour, when we are celebrating him, should we begin with his weaknesses? No. We should begin with his strengths. And nobody can say that you can write the history of this country and not recognize that Chedi Jagan played an important role. Yes, he was East Indian. Yes, he was head of the East Indian Party. Yes, he played the race politics, or the race politics played him. Yet at the end of the day, we have to recognize that the brother played an important role. So did Burnham. So did Guyana. So did Rodney. So did Hoyt. So did Mr. Jagan. They played pivotal roles. You don't have to agree with their politics. But we have to have the courage to say that they played important roles, and Jagan played an important role. You don't have to embrace Jagan's party. But the PPP must understand that when you are saying to African Guyanese that their leaders didn't play an important role, you can't expect them to wrap their arms around your leader. I hear Irfan Ali and Jack Dio talk about the PPP from 1950. The PPP that they're in is not the PPP from 1950. The PPP that was born in 1950 ended in 1956. There was a split in that PPP in 1955 when Burnham, Lachman Singh, Jainarayan Singh, etc. left. And there was a split in 1956 when Sidney King, Martin Carter, Rory Westmans left, etc. That PPP came to an end in 56. There was a new PPP, a Jaganite PPP, that came into being in 1957. And there was a Burnhamite PPP that became PNC. So the PPP from 57 is not the same PPP from 1950, and they must stop talking about it like that. The PPP from 50 to 57 included Burnham, included Jagan, included Guyana, included Martin Carter, included Rory Westmans, Jane Phillips Gay. It included all of those people, Ashton Chase. And most of them left in 1955, 56. And from 56, what we had was the Jaganite PPP. And the Jaganite PPP ended when they came back to power in 1992. Dr. Jagan and Mr. Jagan were part of that regime, but it was no longer the Jaganite PPP of 57 to 92. From 1992, it's a new PPP. A PPP that doesn't resemble the earlier two PPPs. Doesn't resemble the PPP in ideology. One thing has been constant from 1957 is the appeal to Indian sentiments. And so be it. Acknowledge that. Once you appeal to Indian sentiments, you have to figure out how you're going to balance that with governing the country. Are you going to govern the country based on Indian domination? Or are you going to balance the country based on Indian support, but multiracial practice? And to do that balance is not easy. And the PPP has made a mess of it. Indian domination for the PPP meant simply Indian supremacy at the level of government and Black inferiority. That is what PPP, that is what guides the PPP. That is what guides the PPP. And you cannot govern based on Indian domination and call yourself a democracy. You're a deeply flawed democracy. You're a deeply flawed democracy. You see, these people believe that we are stupid. I keep saying over and over again. I hear them saying, my friend Ravi Dev, and I hear some other people saying, every time there have been protests, Indian people have been attacked by Black people. Black people have been the aggressors, and Indian people have been the victims whenever there have been protests. You see, what they're trying to do, what dictatorships like to do, is to ensure there is no protest. And they try various means of ensuring that. One way of ensuring that there is no protest is to try to bribe people of the other side. Another way is to try to use the armed forces to put down any protest. And the PPP has tried both. They're using both. They're bribing a handful of Black people, and they're using the police force, mainly using the police force to drive fear into the African community and shut down protests. And so they're saying, we have to shut down protests because whenever these people protest, Indian people get hurt. It's a very untrue statement. In 1961, if you go back to the protests from 61, ethnic conflict from 61 and protest. 61, Indian people were the aggressors. 62 and 63, Africans. 64, Indians. When the British imposed proportional representation, Jagan came back and urged Indian people to rebel. And this violence, that's how you got places like Buxton were attacked. They see these at the back, and the bombing of the boat in the Demerara River going up to Linden. And then after the 1973 election, again, the PPP called for civil disobedience and non-cooperation. Large protest. But then they skip history because it will make them look bad. In 1974, when Walter Rodney came back to this country, Askria held protests. Not a single Indian was touched. In 1979-80, the Walter Rodney Civil Rebellion, not a single Indian was touched. In 1983, we had what was called the Food Rebellions, protests all over the place against food shortage. Not a single Indian was touched. In 1989, big strikes all over the place against OIT's economic recovery program. Not a single Indian was touched. They think they know history. Ravidev likes to talk about silencing. Why is he saying certain things knowing that it's not true? Whenever there are protests, Indian people, I just list some big protests there. Indian people weren't touched. The PPP had a 185-day strike in 1977. No Indian was touched, no Africans were touched. The teachers had big strike in 1977-78 on the quarantine. There was no ethnic violence. No ethnic group was singled out. We come to the 1997 election. And in the aftermath of the 1997 election, there were protests, and Indians were beaten and taken advantage of in Georgetown. But in 2011, after the 2011 election, APNU was on the streets for almost 2 months. Not a single Indian was touched. I wasn't part of those marches. Indians would come out on the bridge in Georgetown, come out of their gate and watch us as we march. Not one Indian was touched. The violence emanating from Buxton. Indians were killed, were beaten and killed at the beginning of that thing by the gunmen in Buxton. And within a year, Africans were being killed by the PPP phantoms. They always talk about boxing as though it was a one-sided thing. It is recorded that over 400 young men, black men, were killed. I mentioned the 2011 protests after that election, and APNU protested. Not a single Indian was touched. I come to 2020, March 6th. There were widespread protests by PPP supporters, mainly Indians. Blacks were beaten. Black children were stoned. Black policemen were beaten, and policewomen. There was no retaliation by black people. There was no retaliation. Black people were beaten. Every time we have protests, Indian people are beaten, and black people are the ones who are doing the beating. Black people didn't beat anybody after the 2020 election. Their people were beaten. And so these people must stop lying. They must tell you all the truth. You see why they don't like me. As David Hines is a racist. None of them could point to anything racist that I say. What I do is that I defend the dignity of black people, and for them that's racism. Backward fools. A set of hypocrites. When the PPP and one of their leaders, now Vice President Jack Dio, is heard on tape talking about how the soldiers, army would kick down your door. Isn't that incitement against the army and police? When Ogunse talk about the people in the army and the police are our kit and kin, they want to jail him. But when they jail him, they got to jail the vice president who said the police and the army would kick your door down. If Ogunse is inciting, Jack Dio is inciting too. When the PPP call Ramjatan and Nagamutu Nimakaran or Nimakaran, when they engage in race baiting and racism, when David Hines say that the young lady who threw Ogunse on the bus is a slave catcher, David Hines is being racist and he should be put in jail. Well, I don't want to share a cell with those who call Nagamutu and Nimakaran. I want to share the jail with them. When you are putting me in jail for calling Gita slave catcher, put them who call Nagamutu and Ramjatan Nimakaran. Let we go to jail together. When you are putting Ogunse in jail, put Jack Dio with it. Not in the same cell. Wow. Let me drink a little water. Drink water and mind my own business. That's what the soca song said. These people are so hypocritical, and they want to silence people like me because they know that I know the story good. Put all of we in the same jail together. If I can call somebody a slave catcher, you can call them Nimakaran. If Ogunse can say the people in the army and police are his kith and kin and they need to turn their guns away from black people, then you can say, Mr. Jack Dio, that the army and the police would kick down your door. What is good for the goose must be good for the gander. Lock up all of you. Lock up yourself. Damn hypocrites. 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 So Mr. Jack Dio came out swinging at the press conference, and then he went up to Babu John. I won't deal with Orphanali. Orphanali said he looked into a mirror, and the mirror was talking to him. I mean, the banner is such a buffoon. He doesn't even understand how to use images. I looked into a mirror, and the mirror was talking to me. And the mirror told me this, and the mirror told you that. You should have said you went into the PPP paper, the mirror, and they told you, oh, you look into a mirror, and the mirror tell you. I mean, buffoonery. So I won't bother with it. I won't bother with it. But Jack Dio was in his element. He said that what the WPA did was shock therapy. Every fool got its own little sense. He was right. We shocked a nation that had slipped into acceptance of the status quo. Black people were beginning to accept their fate of second-class citizenship. Indian people were beginning to accept the comfort of having a government that is projecting them as superior. The nation was becoming complacent. And the Working People's Alliance deliberately decided to shock the nation out of that complacency. Jack Dio, you're right. You call it shock therapy. You have your own way of dealing with language. Yes, you're right about that. And it is our democratic right to do that. If we see a nation is dying, we have to revive that nation either by mouth-to-mouth resuscitation or some form. And that is what we did. Yes, you are right. And since we have shocked the nation, you all have had to speak to this nation. All of a sudden, you all running 11, you all playing cricket now. You all send a whole cricket team into Victoria. We make you all do it. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. You would not have done it if we had not gone to Buxton and Victoria and other places and said, this confounded nonsense must stop. And because you're all afraid of the consequences, you all went to Victoria to play a three-card trick. We come here and we made promises. Most of those people who turn up, they believe you all went to share out something. And when they realize you all ain't sharing out, they say you all ain't there for nothing. Because you all ain't there for nothing. You all went there to make promises. When you all go to East Indian areas, you all go there to deliver things, whether it's Monrepo or wherever. But you all go to black communities to make promises. And black people, you know, I mean, some of us fall for, the three-card trick. And so we turn up there. Because we black people always think we get sense, we're going to take the people thing and we're going to vote for them. But the people photographing you all. And those photographs will be there for your all children and grandchildren to see. You are forgetting the era in which we live. I'm not stopping anybody from going if they want to make representation for themselves and for their communities. You have to, they're the government. But realize what they're doing. They only want you there for photo opportunities. They want you out there for just photo opportunities. You all are going there in good spirits. You all are going there genuinely to make demands of your government, which is it's your right. And I will not say to our people not to go. Go and make representations. It's your right. That is the right we are fighting for. You shouldn't have to go. The government should be looking after black communities. That they shouldn't have to come after the WPA was there and the WPA shocked them into going. They shouldn't have to. They should have been doing that as a matter of course. But the WPA shocked them and so they've gone. And they figure that they can trick you all in front of your face. Now you see me, now you don't see me, you know, the 3-card trick thing. So go when they come and make your demands. But know that you are talking to people who are out to trick you and people who believe that you could be tricked. Know that. So when you go there, you defend and protect your dignity. Do not trade your dignity for the promise of a piece of bread. Do not trade your dignity for the promise of a piece of bread. Go there, but walk in with your dignity and walk out with your dignity. Don't go in there with your dignity and walk out without your dignity. So I have a slight disagreement with some on our side who believe that people should not go and make demands at these outreaches. That's what we fought for. The WPA shocked them and said, get out and level with black people. You are now dancing to our tune. Our tune. Insofar as you get up and get there. But black people, do not sell your dignity for the promise of a piece of bread. And even if it were not a promise, even if it were a Kargat's piece of bread, still don't sell your dignity for a piece of bread. I want them to do more outreaches. Go to Buxton next week. Go to Golden Grove and Haslington the next week. Go to Anns Grove where we were last night. I want you all to go. But when you trick the people, we come in for you with a second round of shock therapy. Thank you, Jack Dio, for the term shock therapy. Look how Jack Dio go on at that press conference. Libel me, libel Aubrey Norton, libel opposition people. And yet some of our people, when Ogunse spoke, they say Ogunse went too far. Look how far Jack Dio gone. Look, we have to understand when you're fighting vicious people, you got to understand. So those who were saying Ogunse went too far, look, Jack Dio accused the WPA members, according to him, all of them on the platform there, collaborate with the PNC to kill Rodney. You see how far he went? Libel, Aubrey Norton say Aubrey Norton get a brother who joined them. You all see how far? So when we trying to play nice, Ogunse went too far. And I'm not criticizing Brother Aubrey because I am happy with Brother Aubrey's statement. So I'm not attacking Brother Aubrey, but I'm saying when you are responding, always take into consideration the situation. And as Brother Aubrey said, he may disagree with language and he think Ogun went too far, but he doesn't have a problem with the message. So Brother Aubrey can get a pass. But those who said Ogunse went too far, he should pull back. Look how far Jack Doe has gone. The opposition can only go as far as the governors go. The oppressed can only go as far as the oppressors go. Look how that man gone. Said the most outlandish things about us. Because Jack Dio realizes that he now has a fight on his hand. That the PPP now have a fight on their hands. There are some people in this society who are prepared to take their lead and to put themselves up as sacrifice so that black people can breathe again in Guyana. He realizes that. And he came out swinging. He's a fighter. He's a fighter. Orphanali and them were begging and crying and begging the police and Jack Dio too. Begging the police to back in. These people should have been charged since the thing happened. You're begging the police for backings. The same police and army that you were cussing a couple of years ago. So you're a fighter, but you're also a coward, because a coward fights. He doesn't ask for backing. Ogun wasn't asking for backing. Ogun said, all he was saying to the army, turn your gun away from your people. But at least Jack Dio understands what has happened in the Guyanese society in the last couple of weeks. And he has decided he would fight back. And so let's get it on, Mr. Jack Dio. If you want to fight back, let's fight. Let's fight. Don't ask the police to back in. Fight like a man, as your friend from St. Vincent said the other day during the election. We go straight in Guyana. Either with you or without you. You've made it clear. You don't want to join with we because we don't have shared values. You made that very clear. We have always said that we believe that we got to come together to develop our country together. You say, no. The country can only develop by the PPP. You're slamming the door of unity and diversity in our face. I hear our friend talk about the only value we have is diversity. Well, if the only value, why not a diverse government? Your vice president said you all don't want that. I hear they talk about Granger and power sharing. Let the record be straight. When Granger got power, he held out the olive branch to the PPP to let's talk about how you all can join this government and have a power sharing government. He did. They don't say anything about that. He did. And he appointed Moses Nagamutu, and the PPP said they're not dealing with Moses Nagamutu. They shut it down. Now, should Granger have called their bluff and named somebody else and let them say that other person is not acceptable? I think he should have done that. But in fairness to him, he held out the olive branch and asked them to join a joint government and appointed Nagamutu. And they shut the door by saying they're not dealing with Nagamutu because he's a Nima Karan. And I thought that Granger should have said, all right, you don't want Nagamutu, I'm going to give you Hamilton Green. And I'm sure they would have said they didn't want Hamilton Green. Granger should have called their bluff But in fairness, Granger held out the olive branch. The PPP closed it. We are holding out the olive branch now. The WP at every meeting is saying that we believe there must be a political solution in the form of shared government. Shared government. And you have shut the door on that again. We don't have shared values, so said. So how do we have one Guyana without shared values? Wouldn't the best one Guyana be a one Guyana government? Where Black people can see their representatives, Amerindian people can see their representatives, and Indian people can see their representatives at the table? Wouldn't it be nice to have an outreach of 11 ministers that include PNC/opposition ministers and PPP ministers? But no, you don't want a one Guyana of equitable distribution of power. You want a mouth one Guyana. I'm going to expose you all every night. Expose you all. Because you all think Black people stupid and you all can throw anything. I challenge you all. Let us have a one Guyana government. Let's have a one Guyana government. That when you all go to Victoria, they can see Prime Minister Phillips and they can see Aubrey Norton and maybe a David Hines and maybe a Kemra Ramjatan. Wouldn't that be a beautiful one Guyana? Wouldn't it be beautiful if the leader of the WPA, the leader of the PPP, the leader of the PNC, and the leader of the AFC can sit down and determine how that oil money that all of our ethnic groups work for, from the Middle Passage to the present? Wouldn't it be beautiful for those four leaders to sit down with an Amerindian leader and determine how that money would be spent? That is what one Guyana should mean. Amerindians can't count on Schumann. He put on his red shirt and he went to Babujan on Sunday. And Jack Dio, welcome in. I'm glad to see you are in red, Mr. Schumann. That is the one Guyana we want. We want the one Guyana where all the leaders and representatives of the people can sit down and chart our destiny together. Jack Dio has closed the door on that and still telling us about one Guyana. The PPP is the only multiracial party. The same man who said the PPP is a coolie party just the other day, he must explain how the PPP went from a coolie party to a multiracial party. Explain that, Mr. Jack Dio. Explain that. We're waiting for explanation. You say it's a coolie party, not me. And now when it suits you, when you trick a few Negroes to go put on a red shirt and go at Babujan, you trick them. And they go there smiling, some of them broad like manatee. And the picture getting taken out. You trick them into going there. You're saying multiracial. You're going to hear from us. I welcome Aubrey Norton's response to you on Friday and over the weekend on Saturday. That's the fight we want to see from our leaders. Some people don't want to go forward. And let us take this thing, let us take this fight. Because they feel, oh, they're opposition people, but they don't want the WPA to get the credit. So they're not giving support, although they know what we are doing is correct. Black people can be our own enemies sometimes. Internal jealousy is more important sometimes to them than the struggle. What the WPA has done is to give an opening for all of the opposition. Not just for the WPA, because this struggle, we alone can't carry this struggle. No single party in this country has the answer to all our problems. No single opposition party has the answer to the opposition struggle. It's for all of us. But some of you all decided you're all not going to show your all face. I'm not even bothering to ask some opposition MPs to come on this show because they're going to say they don't want to associate with me. Some of them are saying that quietly. And while they're saying that, Jack Joe is beating the hell out of us, lying on us, libeling us, threatening us. And I don't want to apologize. I don't want to appear with David Hines. I don't want to appear on David Hines' show. Tomorrow night, Brother Ganesh is going to be on. He and I spoke. We didn't get to speak very long because I was very busy. But I've invited him and he has accepted to come on tomorrow night. And if he does come on, whatever you think about him, it will show courage. Courage that some Africans who are going to benefit from our struggle, some African MPs don't have. They're prepared to sell the dignity of Black people for political correctness. And they're playing politically correct, and the other side is playing them nasty. So the court said that Irfan Ali acted unconstitutionally when he dismissed the Police Service Commission. The court said that. Isn't it a damn shame? Isn't it a damn shame that the head of state, if we believe Mr. Slow, and I'm sure we do believe Mr. Slow, calling Mr. Slow to tell Mr. Slow who must be promoted in the armed forces? Mr. Slow said that in open court. He said that in the open. And these are people who are telling you about violating the law. In democratic politics, such a leader in a real democracy, such a leader would be gone, would resign. Nobody should have to call on him. But these people have no shame. No shame. They went to Babu John to commemorate a great leader, Dr. Chedi Jagan. And in Dr. Jagan's name, in the presence of his daughter, they spent 99% of their speeches cursing the opposition in Jagan's name. I wouldn't say Jagan is turning in his grave because I don't believe in that stupidness. But the Jagonites who were sitting there, Donald and Clement and them, I want to know how they feel. They couldn't talk about Jagan's philosophy. They couldn't talk about Jagan's praxis because they don't know it. They don't care about it. Jagan is the father of the nation. That's cheap talk. Talk about Jagan's praxis. Talk about Jagan's ideology. Talk about what made Jagan act in the way he acted. Talk about his views on imperialism, on his views on the working class. I think it's often said, Jagan struggled for the working class not to remain the working class and dedicate himself for the working class to live itself. Jagan struggled with the working class for the working class come bourgeoisie like he. So he was damn right. They're so shallow that is why they're jealous of people who are not as shallow as them. Couldn't speak about Jagan. Spend all the time cussing the opposition in Jagan's name. Those are the leaders we have to deal with. Not only are they authoritarian, dictatorial, they're ignorant of their own society, ignorant of their own history, the history of their country. And that is the worst brew, a brew of authoritarianism and ignorance. They have no sense of the world that they live in. And at least we don't want our leaders to become one-man dictators and to become intolerant of those who are not as lucky as they are and didn't get opportunities like them. We don't want our leaders to be elitist, but we want our leaders to have wisdom. And when you listen to those chaps, they're so bereft of wisdom. They're so bereft of wisdom. But one thing they've recognized is that we are inspiring our people to stand up and fight, real fight. For 3 years, we have spent our time enumerating all the wrong things they've done. Bob Marley says, now you see the light, you got to stand up for your rights. We know about all the bad things they've done, and we're going to continue to talk about them. But we're going to talk about them in a different environment when we fight. I said to them, next week, you all went to Victoria? I'm telling you all no. You all go to Buxton next week. Find your asses in Buxton or Ansgrove or Golden Grove. That's where you should go. And we're going to make you go. Because we're running things now. You are going to respond to our drums. You get African drum at Babu Jan. You all get time with African drum? Is we making you all putting on this facade of diversity? We know it's a facade, but we are making you all act, including act stupid. Every dog got his day, you know. You all were carrying on for 3 years, doing as you feel like. All of a sudden, no. All over you all going, people are racist and they want violence. Aubrey Norton didn't bulldoze anybody else. Abinaton didn't say he bulldozed people out to show that he's strong or not to look weak. All the violence against half of your population. My brother, Ralph Ramkaran, had a good article, but he said, our complaints about African marginalization are not genuine. When the coalition closed down estates and tried to move sugar workers into other things, what did you all, Ralph was that, when you all said that well, I don't think Ralph himself said that, but when PPP people and other commentators said the coalition did that because they want to get at Indian people. That was genuine, right? They're talking about weaponize. Orphan, learn a new word now, weaponize. They're weaponizing race. Orphan, you all weaponize the closing of those sugar estates. You all racialize it and weaponize it. You all racialize it and weaponize it. And now you all are telling us we are racializing black suffering. And it's wrong. Hypocrites. Jack Dio get a new tune now. David Hines said that all they wanted Nagamutu and Ramtatan was to bring a few Indian votes. The tape is there. Somebody from the audience asked why they're not seeing Nagamutu and Ramjatan out here struggling with us. And I explained to them that the arrangement we had with the AFC was an electoral arrangement. Not a political arrangement, an electoral arrangement. That is a fact, Jack Dio. That is a fact. It was an electoral arrangement. And Ramjatan said it. He said when the AFC was leaving the coalition the other day, he said we had an electoral arrangement, but now we're going to do our politics separate. David Einstein got to say that. But you know you're speaking to Indian people. So you're saying David Einstein let out a secret that all they wanted you all votes for was a government. But it's okay, Jack, if you want to war like that, I could war like that too. I could war like that too. Just don't ask for back-ins when I answer you. If you want to spin things, I could spin too. And when I spin, don't say that I am inciting black people for racism and war. You were talking to your Indian people and you were inciting them, I think. You didn't hold back when you tell them they must chase Granger, the president, they must chase Nagamutu, the prime minister. You weren't inciting them, by Jack Dio. You weren't inciting them. I ain't asked black people to chase you yet, you know. I ain't asked them to chase you. All I said is civil disobedience. I ain't asked them to chase you and walk behind you. You asked them to walk behind black leaders and opposition and then government leaders. I ain't come there yet. But if you tickle me, go whine. Because I'm reading from your playbook. Your playbook. Chase them, chase Granger, because they will be illegal. You are in government. You are in government based on an installation. The Americans said that. You're installed, and they got to know because they were part of the installation at the level of the Secretary of State, not at the level of some quisling. You're installed. You are the same government like the Granger government, as you say, after the no confidence vote. After the no confidence vote, the Granger government was a legal government. A legal government. You are a legal government, but you're installed. You were installed. When you pelt in stone, know your own story. But I'm telling people to chase you. I'm telling you, go to the village. Go to my village tomorrow and hold your outreach. I'm inviting you. But know that when we bark, you got to get in line. When we held a protest in Buxton last year, you come in there and hold one at the next site of the village. Last week we went to Victoria. This week you going to Victoria. When we bark, as it must be. You see, you don't want us to bark. We're not playing you like a violin, although we're not a people of violin players, but we're playing you like a sweet African drum. You're getting played. Go and mow down some houses. Go to Peace at all and mow down some houses. I challenge you, Ali and Jack Dew. Send the police to go and kill another or in Boston tonight. I challenge you. Spit in another black woman's face. I challenge you. Good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. I wanted to thank all of you who have showed faith with this program and other programs. Without these programs, I don't know where we would have been. I don't know where we would have been. But you all have stayed with us. These programs would not be where they are without you all. I want to thank. I want to thank you all for just being here. I want to thank you all for those of you all who have given your support, material support and moral support. I want to thank many of you for all the wonderful calls after Friday night program, the voicemail, voice notes, and so on that I've received. I don't have a personal secretary, so I have to do all of this myself, and I can't answer all the mails that I get. And I want to apologize. I can't answer all the requests that I get for people to talk to me for 5 minutes and so. I would love to do it. But bear with me if I don't get to you, but know that I appreciate it all. Know that we in the WPA are very thankful for the solidarity that you all have shown to us. I want to say thank you. Thank you. Parties by themselves don't win a struggle. The struggle is won by the people. Leadership is important, and people will know when leadership touches them. People know that because they have feelings. They have feelings. They're human beings. They're human beings. To our Indian Guyanese brothers and sisters, I want to say that you all are equally important to this struggle. We understand because of our politics where you stand and why you can act in a certain way. We understand that. Our struggle is not aimed at Indian people. We're not that daft and stupid Indian people don't, the ordinary Indian woman or man in the community don't make policies. The Indian woman or man don't tell the government go and bulldoze people home in Mocha. No, the ordinary Indian woman and man and boy and girl, you are sufferers like us too. But you're suffering differently because the perception that your government that you voted for is in power and will protect you is real. Perception becomes reality, and we understand that. So our struggle is not against Indian people. Our struggle is against the authoritarian government that has some elite Indian souls and some Amerindian masks and some African Guyanese masks. I have been extremely patient with people who are selling out their own people. You're not selling out your people by going to an outreach and demanding of the government. You're right to do that. But those of you who are prepared to sell your people, at some point we have to have that conversation. Because some of you all going to come running back, you know. Some of those faces we saw there at Babu Jan, you all going to come running back to us. And we'll have to decide when you all come running back to us what to do. There's life after the PPP, you all know that. There's life after the PPP. There's life after the PPP. And you all allowing yourself to be photographed. At least the people who went to Victoria when they believe in sharing out something. Those of you all who went to Babu Jan know they weren't sharing out anything. So you all went there. You all allow yourself to be tricked for a photograph. And whatever else they pay you all. You all gonna come running back to us. And we have a lot of love in our community, and we've always welcomed back prodigal sons and daughters. But this time, if we were going to welcome you all back, the price wouldn't be nothing. You all are just disgracing your ancestors. Just disgracing your ancestors. And the fact that they're preying on women, the same women who they kneel down on, get the police kneeling down on their back, the same women who they spit in their face, they're targeting you all. You all are still my sisters, still my brothers, but the love is going to be tough if you all continue doing what you're all doing. The love will be tough. Still, love you all. Will be some tough love. There must be a difference between standing up and demanding your rights from the government. That is the right and just thing to do. But to allow yourself to be used as props to make the government look good, to consciously do that, is another thing. Thank you all very much. Tomorrow night, Ganesh Maipal will be here, and I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. An interesting discussion that we must have. We have to have that discussion with Indian Guyanese in an environment in which a government of their ethnic group is beating down on African people. Where does the Indian in the opposition stand? It's not an easy place. They have to negotiate it, and I think Ganesh and them brought that out into the open. On the other side, it's the same thing. Where do Africans in the PPP stand as they sit in the PPP and look at what that government is doing to Black people, killing them, demolishing their homes? Where do they stand? It's a conversation that we need to have. And I hope Ganesh and I can begin that conversation tomorrow night. It's not an easy road. It's not an easy road. It's not an easy road. Some took the easy way out and condemn Ogunse. Ganesh didn't condemn Ogunse. He and Danielle and Ubraj and Sister Natalie, they didn't condemn Ogunse. I want to point that out. Although they've been quoting the press as doing this wrong, they didn't. Some took that easy way out. Ganesh and them didn't take that easy way out. So we're going to have that conversation tomorrow night. Until then, I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for coming out here tonight and keeping watch, and in the process, steeling ourselves for this struggle, which we hope will not be prolonged. Will not be prolonged.